Okay, so for the next hour or so, we're going to be looking at planning and designing our literacy instruction for our students. So really putting our students at the forefront of our work with planning and designing. And I'd love to introduce myself. I'm Jen Kelly. I'm a teacher consultant with POPEY, and I get to co-present today with lovely Lisa, who is the program manager and teacher consultant. And if you haven't checked out our website, we're here at poppy.ca. We have lots of resources on there for you, lots of different links that you can check out and see what we have happening. Also, just wanted to mention that we have closed captioning available for anyone that would find that useful. You can find that on the toolbar on your Zoom toolbar. Okay, so specifically today, we're going to be really diving into some strategies and resources, as I mentioned, to really focus on intentionally planning and designing our literacy routines for our students to meet the needs of all of our students. So we're going to be doing that by taking a look at the theory behind a lot of our planning and designing, but we're also going to merge that with classroom practice so you can see the how of how we can implement this within our classrooms, how we can make the most of the planning and intentional design for our students. Also just wanted to point out that if you're having any kind of technical issues or anything, we have lovely Nadia here that can help you. She's under Poppy support. And she's also going to be popping in links when we talk about different things throughout our session today. Okay, so a quick check-in to see how we feel today. So let's see how we collectively feel. This is a cute check-in where we can really get to know if we need to ramp up our energy, Lisa and I as presenters for you today, or if we kind of like go with the flow, we can be calm. So yes, in the chat box, if you could write down the number that is associated with your well-being for today. Oh, we've got some 8, interesting. Some curious 6s, fantastic. Calm 7, talkative 3s. Excellent. Okay, I would say I'm probably around a 6 today too. I love the 8 picture though, it just makes me laugh. All right, this is a wonderful check-in to do with your students as well, because as we know from all the work that we do with social emotional learning in our primary classrooms, that our students' well-being and how they are feeling greatly impacts their learning. So it's a kind of a nice little check-in to do with your students at the beginning of the day, after lunch, and plan your day accordingly. So as we consider intentionally planning and designing for our students, we really want to think about how to foster that engagement for our students. So I'm going to share with you this short video from that was on the BC Fairies Twitter site. And I would like you to think about, you know, the student or this child as a whole person and what the student can bring to our classroom, what our students can bring to our classrooms when we really focus on their interests and engagement. That video just speaks to me about like the connection when we really notice our students as whole people and bring about and allow and encourage those interests to come through in the work that they do in the classrooms and how they show their knowledge, and you know, just look at the innovative amazingness of young Joshua. So when we think about that video that we just shared and understanding our students and really getting to know them as people, these are some of the questions that you can ask your students to try and get to know how we can intentionally design and create those moments of engagement for our students. Like a time when you were really interested in learning, and what are we doing right now that really interests you? How do you carry out plans? What is easy about school? What's more challenging? If you have a question that you ask your students to really get to know them well, please throw it into the chat box so we can share those questions that really get to know our students and create that sense that we know who they are and we honor who they are as individuals in our classroom. So we can go even further and really look at who our students are as unique readers and writers by giving them reading interest surveys and writing interest surveys. So these interest surveys are also on our website. And when you think about the questions here, like all of the knowledge and all of the uniqueness that we can learn from our students just by asking them, do you enjoy when someone reads to the whole class? Some of our students are going to say no to that, and we want to learn a little bit more about how we can make that time in our classroom more fitting for our students. Enjoy telling other people about the books that you've read. So if we have students that love that, then we can really tailor our classrooms to book talks and things. So here's our writing interest survey. How do we enjoy writing stories, or do we like to write more nonfiction information? And the big question here that I'd love to hear from you in the chat box is, how does this information inform our decisions as we're intentionally planning for instruction, as we're thinking about read alouds, as we're thinking about writing topics? So how can this inform our decisions? If you could share your thoughts on that in the chat box. We would love to hear from you. Absolutely. Thanks, Deanna. We know who may or may not need extra encouragement. Encouragement is a very powerful word. Absolutely. So as you're thinking about that, how we can really inform our decisions, I'm just going to pop in to thinking about a class profile. So we've talked about really getting to know the uniqueness of our students, the strengths that they bring personally to our classroom, but we can also look at the collective. So we can also take that information that we're gathering through the surveys, through those questions that we ask our students, become that seeing teacher that really gets to know our students. But then we can think of our class in general and think, what are the areas what are their strengths collectively? What are areas of growth collectively? What are their preferences and their social emotional needs? So we can do that by beginning to fill out a class profile. And again, this is linked out on our website as well, if that's helpful for you. So you might think, what do you already know about your students and what information do you still need to gather? I had the wonderful opportunity of being in many different classrooms across BC in the last couple of weeks. And what amazed me was how well the teachers already knew their students as a class and individually. When I would walk in, they would say, oh, you know what, this is the best group. They're very kind to each other. They're very chatty. So then I could really, if I was doing a demonstration lesson or something, or just talking with the students, I already had a really good idea about what they needed in terms of movement breaks, in terms of turn and talk times, what they needed social emotionally, and that was super helpful that teachers were already there with their students, even in the first weeks of September. So this can really affect your planning implications. So if you think about the class profile and think, what are the planning implications to think about as I consider literacy instruction or instruction in general for this group? For instance, if this was our class profile that we were looking at, we know that the strengths are, they're considerate of other people's feelings, but like to discuss things. They might be having more difficulty describing their thinking and relating to characters' feelings. They need to move around a lot and act out stories, getting to know this class. and really working on those feeling words and calming down practices. So given that, if you could, in the chat box, share one routine or activity that could support the strength or interest of this class, of this fictional class, and also share one routine that could support the growth area or the social emotional learning needs of these students. I would love to hear how we could move forward with this fictional class, and hopefully that you can relate that to the students that you're working with, and some planning implications for your students. So as you're putting that into the chat box, thank you, Lisa. Teacher modeling of how readers and writers think as they relate to text, a lot of like thinking out loud. That would be a wonderful idea. So this really leads to a universal design for learning, a UDL kind of approach to our students, by thinking about what needs to be heavily scaffolded, like Lisa mentioned, like the teacher modeling of how readers and writers think in comparison to text. That's going to probably need to be heavily scaffolded for this fictional group. Having regular meeting time to share ideas, fantastic. So we want to ensure that we're setting up those routines and structures to make sure that we are giving them a lot of time to share ideas, that we are giving them turn and talk time. So we're really thinking about the natural variability of our diverse learners and how we can design that instruction that's both flexible, but also meeting the needs of our students individually. And I love this. If we can predict it, we can plan for it. So even just going in, like I said, into those classrooms and not having a lot of background, I was able to plan some instructional routines with the knowledge that the teachers gave me to make sure that we were setting the students up for success. Oh, excellent. Acting out story elements to build in movement. Definitely. Great idea, Lisa. Inferencing and connecting on that area of feelings. And then Natalia mentioned class discussion, reading books that identify feelings, zones of regulation. Perfect. So in addition to planning for for universal design for learning, we can also be thinking about how we can vary the resources and materials for our students to meet their needs through different resources. So what do they need in terms of different reading levels, in terms of technology, in terms of, even just having our space organized for our students. And then also thinking about materials such as manipulatives and video and, tablets for our students. What is going to make their experience successful so that they can, take risks, because that's the main thing that we want them to do in our classroom, is to feel safe enough to take risks. So if we vary our resources and materials to meet the needs of our students, our hope is that they feel comfortable with the materials and the resources, and then being able to have the different ways that they are showing their knowledge. Going back to the video that I shared with you at the beginning of the session, how can we really get to know our students so that they can demonstrate their knowledge in a way that works for them and that gives us the most knowledge, I guess, of their learning and their competencies. So super exciting to think about all this differentiated instruction and UDL. I'm going to pass it over to Lisa, who's bringing it back to literacy instruction.
I wanted to circle back to that video that Joshua did at the beginning, the BC Fairies one. So I don't know if you've had experience or your children or your students with stop motion videos and how much work it is and how long it can take to do stop motion to even make 10 seconds of video. So the fact that I think Joshua is maybe around 10 or 11, so he's a little bit older than primary, but you just think of the patience and the focus and the precision and the technical skills everything that was involved in that video just blows my mind. And I'm just so appreciative of what he did. And that's something I don't have the patience or the skill set, but my sister used to do that and make little stop motion videos with her stuffed animals. And the finished product was always amazing. And yet I watched her do it for hours and hours, and I just thought I couldn't do it, but I loved what she created. So for me, what that made me think of, if I was doing a project, I would maybe involve music or photography in a different way. So if there's something that you know that you really, that when you get in the zone and you forget about time and suddenly hours and hours have passed, what type of activity is that really just draws you in and time just sort of disappears? So if you want to share that in the chat box, if it's a craft or a hobby or an activity or a way of learning, that would be great to know as well, as we transition here to looking at how this can fit in with planning literacy instruction for our students. So there's some debate over the years as the pendulum swings back and forth in different camps over the decades, even since, I know since Jen and I have been teaching, we've been teaching about 20 years, and comprehensive literacy, balanced literacy, whole literacy, there's all sorts of things, hooked on phonics, that's very American, but some of the buzz phrases that we've seen. But when we look at it from POPEY's point of view, what we look at when we look at the research, comprehensive and balanced, we use quite interchangeably, but really what we want to reinforce is that balance isn't just equal time for reading, writing, or a language and word work, but it is also a balance of levels of scaffolded support. So reading and writing to, with, and by students. So giving them the opportunity to see us reading and writing to them gives them access to text at a higher level than they're able to read and write independently. We help model and support and demonstrate what good readers and good writers do. So we're giving them examples and a stretch goal, something for them to reach to. We're giving them opportunity and time to try it out themselves, with us being that coach or guide on the side, checking in and watching closely and giving them some feedback. And then also giving them the time to be able to do reading and writing independently, to see where they are and to give them those opportunities of choice and topic and format. So really mixing up the variety there. But also we want to bring in those other literacy components. So what I've mentioned, so oral language, the visual literacy. Do you have a lot of key visual supports around the room? Are we helping students who maybe are English language learners, or for everybody coming into kindergarten and one, these are the building blocks for them. So the visuals are so important, and word work being that key first step in building up those building blocks as readers and writers and teaching them to be word solvers. So the other part of it that's comprehensive and balanced, that's high impact, that the research shows helps to support our students as developing readers and writers, are these different types of instruction. So direct, indirect, whole class, small group, as well as time for them to work on things individually. Various genres, so nonfiction, fiction. Are we looking at graphic novels? Are we looking at magazines? Are we looking at digital media online? And then giving them time to use play and inquiry to follow their passions, their curiosity, and their questions, so that the learning that they're doing has meaning and relevance to them as an individual. And while we're wanting the students to learn the same literacy skills and strategies, they have opportunities for flexibility and choice to choose what they might be interested in reading about or writing about, to make sure that we're really sparking that engagement and enthusiasm with them. So our comprehensive literacy framework, if you've been in a POPEY workshop, you for sure have seen this. And we like the visual representation of the two main blocks being reading and writing. And here again, we've got scaffolded levels. So reading and writing to, with, and by students. Word work sits on top and informs and supports the early stages of both reading and writing. And the oral language at the bottom, I know Maureen Dockendorf, when she's talked a lot about changing results for young readers and literacy work when she's spoken in BC, she talks about oral language being the currency in the classroom, and especially for early readers and writers, or ones that aren't even reading and writing yet. This is how we're really connecting with students to find out what they're thinking, what they know, what they're excited about, and being able to articulate and share their learning with their peers. So a huge, huge, huge part of that literacy framework is the oral language piece. And by making sure we give our students opportunities to read fiction and nonfiction, and that we read fiction and nonfiction to students, it allows them to develop different types of thinking strategies that ultimately are what become their reading strategies and their writing strategies. I know for me, when I was in primary in the classroom, I think my read alouds skewed quite heavily to fiction. And then I realized I needed to be also modeling and doing read alouds of nonfiction, because it was a totally different set of thinking strategies and skills and forms that come with those different types of books. So just looking here, obviously there's connections and questions and making meaning and understanding, but you see it's all those literary elements and story elements in fiction. And then in nonfiction, it really is learning how to sort, process, categorize, and understand different types of information. And of course, we can have opinions and connections to that as well, but it's very different. So we want to make sure we're modeling and demonstrating and sharing those types of books and giving our kids rich experiences and being able to do reading and writing based on both of those types of texts. So one way to do that, this one we've got set up, and I'm going to set it up for you. We'll do a read aloud and then get you to be in the role of the students and use some sentence stems to make connections and have a group conversation about a book. And this could be an anchor chart I might have by my carpet area. I might initially have a few sentence starters that I've done, and then I might invite my students to help me come up with some more and add to this list through the year as we become more proficient readers. And we build up our toolkit of reading strategies and thinking strategies. So all of these sentence stems we're going to come back to after we do this read aloud. And this is one of my favorite new books that I found. And it's called One Word from Sophia. So you can sit back and listen and enjoy this story. And then we'll invite you to choose a sentence stem and share a connection or a thought you have about this lovely book. Oh, thank you so much to everyone who shared a sentence stem in their thought. Lori, that is amazing that your daughter did a PowerPoint for you to get a cat. That sounds like my sister. And Trisha, I think you used the word persistent. So we've got precocious. Yeah, so I wasn't the only one who could. I was a bit shocked when she actually got a real giraffe. And we know it's fiction because I think in the real world that wouldn't happen. Built up her vocabulary there a little bit. And she knew how to tailor it to her different audiences. We could talk about persuasiveness there. Yeah, yeah. So and if we were sitting on the carpet together in the same room, I might have paused it and had you guess whether she would get the giraffe, or when she finally just reduced her campaign to one word, what the one word might have been. So you could have some fun with this. And tie in some math too, definitely the graphing and that, yeah. Yeah, same thing with the pet fish. You could, I know one of the classes I was a sub in a TOC years ago, the principal cautioned me in the morning, just so you know, there's a pet rabbit that just has free reign in the classroom. So I kept forgetting about the rabbit all day and almost stepping on it. I thought I'll never get invited back if I squash their rabbit. All right. So shifting from thinking as readers to thinking about writing. And are we giving our students a diverse range of genres or kinds of texts that they can see as examples or stretch goals for you to help them practice by modeling and demonstrating opinion writing and persuasive writing. These are from a series of Australian books by Tony Stead called What's Your Point? And they're a bit hard to find now, but you can find them online, I think, but I know there are other books as well that have this kind of format. National Geographic ones definitely do, and you can find some on Epic as well. But on the left there, the which game is best, that is targeted for kindergarten age group or grade level. And it's getting kids to say which game they prefer between soccer and baseball. And the why should we keep our classroom clean? So that's another opinion or persuasive text, really. That's targeted for grade 1-2 level. And then what's the most important invention on the right there? That's more of a grade 3 level book. And all of his books include a mix of photographs, like a typical book would be illustrated, but then also children's illustrations as well. So you can see there on the left, the which game is best. That's illustrations by kindergarten students. And then on the right, the inventions, you can see that's illustrated partially by students in grade 3. So thinking about modeling different types of writing for different reasons, different audiences and different purposes, and then also giving the students opportunities for choice to connect with what they care about. So I'm going to ask you to pick one book, and which topic would you write about? So which game is best between soccer or baseball? And we think about maybe including a reason or evidence. If you would rather write a book about 2 different activities, like maybe hockey and lacrosse, you could include that as well. An informational writing, how many reasons could you come up with for why we should keep our classroom clean? You could just list one in the chat box. And then I found this quite fascinating, what they included on their list of inventions. So this whole book, these were the inventions that they included. So maybe there's a few key inventions that you think should have been in there that weren't. So which book do you connect with that you would want to have a response to? And just give us your initial thoughts. I'll do another 30-second music timer here. Which would you write about? You can tell me why, or you can include some information actually about the content of the book. I think I would pick baseball out of the 2 games, and I would give some evidence for that. Jen, how about you? Sorry, I know you're muted there, but, oh, you just put it in the chat box.
Yeah,
oh, you said soccer. We could have a little debate about that.
I know, soccer is like the ultimate like sport for everyone, because even, yeah, you just don't need any equipment other than a ball, and lots of things can be a ball.
That's right, that's right. And I did play both growing up. Yeah, and they were both great for sure. I think maybe it was that I liked my coach better in baseball. Also, all right, we'll put 30 seconds on the clock and have you share what would you choose out of these 3 books and a reason why, or a thought or a connection. So the last activity we're going to look at here, and again, this comes out of Columbia, and I really loved how they framed it. It was quite simple. So 2 pieces of writing. Here's this one. And this one. So just if you can in the chat box, what's a similarity or a difference that you notice? Obviously the one on the right is longer, it's more complex. What does the one on the right have? And how would you characterize the one on the left? juicy words, more details, more engaging. Yeah, the one on the right has a more clear point. Colors, varied punctuation, yes. Yeah, you get a real sense of the writer's voice, descriptive words, more details. Yeah. Thank you all. I worked really hard at that one. I wrote both of these, I say with great pride. And thanks, Deanna. You can see, and I highlighted, I changed some of the font to be blue because I was trying to draw your eye to. So yesterday we've got that marker for when. Erica, we know who Erica is. It's got thinking, it's got feeling words, it's got the punctuation with the yelling, with the stop in all caps. The sun was shining, a little bit of the tone and the setting. And yeah, so I think we often think about how our students progress as writers from the one on the left to the one on the right. And yet the way that they framed it at Columbia, I think it was a real aha moment for me. So what they framed the one on the left as is summarizing, and the one on the right as storytelling. And you think of that, how often that early writing is summarizing, which is a great early start, but that it really is almost like a list. And it's great because if they've got sequencing and it's in the right order, that's wonderful. And that's a really great start. But thinking for myself, if I had had this sense of it being summarizing and stretching it, evolving it into storytelling for my students, how I could have set them up for success with that and really helped them to grow. So can we explicitly teach our students the difference? Because I bet even my kindergarten students, they wouldn't be able to write that version on the right, the storytelling longer one. But if I asked them what they did at the park yesterday orally, I think so many of them would be able to orally tell me that. So can we use that oral storytelling to help them develop that sensibility of story and flow and sequence and setting and detail and language to help them? So could this be an exemplar or stretch goal for them to get to? So they know what they're aiming for. So that's part of that specific feedback and encouragement for next steps so that they know with some specificity and some clarity what those next steps can look like. And that might be asking them orally what they did yesterday, and then you writing it down and showing them how they helped you to, you wrote it down for them, but that was their story. And they do have the ability to share all of that with you. And our job through the years to help get them ready so that they're able to start getting more of it down in writing. So I hope you like that as much as I did. I thought that was a really wonderful way of framing it, with summarizing and evolving to storytelling. And thank you for what you're sharing in the chat. I'm trying to keep up there. Yeah, if Kay's wrote the story on the left, I would be thrilled too, for sure. Yes, thank you. Oh, you're all so supportive. I appreciate your positive feedback. And circling back to that oral language being the currency in the classroom and reinforcing what we just showed of that oral rehearsal and being able to talk out their story ideas, we really want to support that classroom of talkers and listeners, because the listening is so key, such a key skill for them to have, because we want them to be able to listen to us. We also want them to be able to listen to each other's stories and learn and grow their storytelling and their writing habits from what they're hearing from their peers as well as us, because again, all of our kids are so different and they bring such different things to the classroom, including their interests and their prior experience. So for us in that setting up and designing the opportunity, part of the opportunity is, first of all, our kids need to feel safe. We want them to feel joyful and like they belong in the classroom. We want to foster that culture of appreciation and respect, and then intentionally build in time to talk into the daily schedule, because we need them to have the time to actually practice it. We want to give them opportunities to do partner talk, small group, and whole class talk. And that flexes different muscles and it allows them to practice different things at different levels. And partner talk with one other person, obviously there's less of an audience, so there's some safety and comfort in a smaller group rather than inviting people to talk in front of the whole class, which could be quite nerve-wracking or anxiety inducing for some of our kids. So that ties back to that sense of safety. And then for us, always that reminder for us as the teacher, the expert in the room, their coach and their guide on the side, we need to make sure that we're doing those demonstrations and then also practicing and helping them practice. So creating that culture of safety and belonging. Compliments is a really wonderful thing to model and encourage our students to notice what other students are doing. Asking questions, how to ask good questions, and also listen to answers, not just wait for your turn to talk when the other person's mouth stops moving. And tying back to those, the books, the Tony Stead books about opinions. So reasons and evidence and how important that is, and talking it all through so that when they sit down, if they're going down to pencil and paper, they've really started to do some of that heavy lifting and sorting and organizing already just by having those conversations and talking it out with their peers and with you or the whole class. So can we structure and lead those intentional conversations for our students in support of really rich reading and writing and thinking experiences, with them having concrete examples of where we want them to go and where they're headed on their journey as young literacy learners. This is actually the cover of a book, but I loved it. I thought it looked like a quote. So thank you all for planting these seeds in our students to turn them into joyful literacy learners and readers and writers that can share. Here are the links that Nadia was sharing in the chat box as we went. Also the books that we use. You can click on the fairies video there if you wanted to check that out and show it to your students. And here's our info if you want to get in touch with us, if you want to check out the website or send us an email. We are here if you have questions or you're looking for resources, so please get in touch. And take good care and enjoy fall and the cloudiness wherever you are.